Hi friends, how are you doing? I'm Guru Rajan. Welcome to my YouTube channel to watch the sequence of videos in Python programming. In this video, you will understand map, reduce and filter functions and their usage. Let's begin. First, let's understand the map function. The map function takes a function and an iterable as the arguments and it returns a map object. Map object is also an iterator, which is an iterator of the results after applying the given function to each element of the iterable. So what it accepts is a function and an iterable, and what it returns is an iterator. Let's see this with an example. Now here is the map function and it takes a function and the iterable. So this function nothing but squares every element that is passed to it. So you take each element one by one from this iterator and then square it, and then you form a map object in the end. So to say that it's a map object, we wanted to print the expression and indeed prove that it's a map object. So you can see what it returns is a map object over here, and we're just printing here to find out that it is indeed a map object. And this map object is passed to the list function, which returns a list, and this is what the each element of the iterator, which is squared, and then a list is formed. So as you can see, the map function applies the function we have given to each element of the iterable and returns an iterator. Let's use a lambda function instead of our own separate function that we wrote. So the lambda function also here, it accepts a single argument in this case. In fact, a lambda function can accept more than one argument also, but what it returns is the result of a single expression. So the lambda function can only have single expression which it executes and then returns the result of that expression. So as you know, you don't need to have a return statement in lambda expression. The expression itself is evaluated and the result is returned. So you can see that x star x will find the square of each element here, and then a map object is returned, and then we use the list to map object, which is also an iterator. That iterator is passed to the list and then we get the entire list. You can also use the map function for accepting the user input. And this is very interesting. As you can see, input function takes the user input, which comes in the form of a string, and then you have the strip. What is the purpose of the strip here? Strip, it removes the leading and trailing blanks in the user input, and then after removing the blanks, it is passed on to split, where it actually splits each element after the occurrence of a space. And then this whole thing map function is taking, and then it applies the int function to each of the string values that we have accepted as input. And we should also remember that each input that we accept from the user is taken as a string in Python. So we need to convert each of them as an integer if you want to do further processing on numbers. So we get a map object through this map function, and then it is passed on to the list, which finally gives the user input in the form of a list. So here we go. We have these inputs that are given. Let's give some trailing blanks, and let's see that the strip indeed removes these trailing blanks. So as you can see, the strip function has beautifully removed all the trailing blanks, and then the split has split the numbers when there is a space. The default argument is the space for split. You can give any other argument for split also, like x, a, b, or any digit, and the output of this whole thing is taken, and then int function is applied to each of these inputs. So we get the map object through this map function. So the map object, which is an iterator, is passed to the list. This list returns an expression. This list returns actually a list, which is named here as expr. So we print the expr to get the final list. So that's about the map function. Now let's interestingly find out its very important cousin, which is the filter function. Now the filter function is interesting because it also takes a function and it can take an iterator or an iterable or a sequence or a container on which you can apply the iteration object. See, for example, the iterable that we give here. So what else it can be? Iterable may be a sequence, a container which supports iteration, or an iterator. So that's what this second argument to the filter function is. But what does it actually do? The filter method will return an iterator that contains all the elements of the original iterable, for which the function check is true. For example, we are generating numbers from 1 to 51 and then this function is applied. So whenever x mod 3 is equal to 0, which is all the numbers when they are divided by 3, they are separately taken out and printed. So it will actually take all the numbers from this iterable or sequence, and then for those numbers for which this statement is true, all those numbers are preserved and that iterable is returned through this list. And finally what we get is a list because we convert that iterable into a list using the list method. So as you can see, the numbers in the sequence 1 to 51, and for those numbers for which this statement is true, those are actually preserved to form another iterator which is converted into a list by the list function. As always, just like the map function, we can use our own separately written function or a lambda function which is written along with the map itself. So similarly, the filter also can take a lambda function which is written along with this. So here we have this range which generates a sequence of elements from 1 to 50, and then this lambda function applies this particular x mod 3 double equal to 0. If this expression is true for each of the element, that element is appended to an iterator. So that iterator is finally returned. So if you have none, it will actually remove the ones that have a 0. For example, if you have none instead of a function, it's going to remove the ones with false and 0 and then print the remaining ones. Here 0 is considered as a string, so it is true. So and that is preserved in the list that is returned. So that's what the cousin of map, the filter function, does. It will filter the elements of the given iterator if the expression in that function holds true. So with this, we look at the final reduce function, which is very important in different contexts. And the functioning of the reduce function is also very interesting. It takes a function and an iterable and an initializer. So in this case, it takes 3 arguments. It takes a function, an iterable and an initializer. So initializer is optional. So let us first see what happens if you don't give an initializer. So here we have a lambda function x and y. Now the value of 1 is given to x, the value of 2 is given to y. So these two first elements are taken as x and y. In this case, x plus y, which is 7, 5 is given to x and 2 is given to y. 5 plus 2 is 7. The result is stored in x. And then next time y takes the value of 3. So 7 into 3, 7 plus 3, because there is a x plus y here. So 7 plus 3 is the result and that goes back to x. And this process iteratively continues. So if you see the documentation for the reduce function, so it takes a function, iterable and an initializer. If the initializer is none, the first value is taken as the value. If there is a initializer, then the initializer is taken as the first value, right? So let's see this with an example. So in this case, there is no initializer. There is a function over here and there is an iterable. There is no initializer. Because there is no initializer, x value is 5 and y value is 2. X plus y becomes 7 and 7 is stored in x, and then y becomes 3 again. So this process continues recursively, and that's the reason you can see the for loop that takes each element in the iterator and then applies the function on it. In our case, the function is just x plus y. So, and finally, what does reduce return? It returns a single value, which can be an integer, a boolean, or a string. You can see that what the reduce returns can be an integer or a string or a boolean. So in this case, the reduce actually returns a number which is an integer value. So 5 plus 2 7, 10, 14. So 7 plus 3 10, 14 and 19. As you can see, 19 is returned. Similarly, if you multiply this, 1 star 2 is 2, 6, 6 4s are 24, 24 into 5, 120. If you make this as 3, so it's 3 times 120, which is 360. So in this case, x value is 3 and y value is 2, and the product of multiplying successive elements in the iterator is stored in x, and finally the result, which is a single value, in this case it is an integer, is returned. As usual, lambda function can only have a single expression, and the result of this expression that is executed is returned. Now reduce is part of the functools library. So functools library is specialized in handling higher order functions. So what do you mean by higher order functions? A function that accepts another function as argument, or it returns another function. Okay, and functools is very specific to handling these higher order functions. Because reduce accepts a function as argument, it's considered as a higher order function. Now here there is an initializer. So what happens if there is an initializer? This initializer is taken as the first element that is present here. For example, the initializer is 100. So we consider as if there is 100 here. So the value of x is 100 and the value of y is 1. And then we add this 100 plus 1, 101, 103, 106, 110 and 115. So that's what happens if you have an initializer. So we have 115 here. So the reduce function is very interesting in the sense that it accepts one more argument, which is an initializer, and it adds cumulatively or multiplies cumulatively based on the expression we give. So the for loop is built into a reduce function itself. So I hope this video gave a clear picture of map, filter and reduce functions. These functions are commonly used in common programming practice. It makes your life easier if you are aware of these three functions while you're doing programming. Your programming skills will go a long way if you understand these functions. You can also view the other video related to Python input functions in the link given below. I hope you liked this video. Please give a like and subscribe. If you have comments, please give in the comment section below for any other similar video you would like me to do. Thank you so much for watching. Have a good one.